If you ever find a trail that isn't on the map, don't follow it, because some paths were made to trap you. This is ASMR 404. Found, subscribe before the woods find you. Use headphones for whispered horror. Arrived at Black Hollow on a morning with the air tasting of ash and rain. The ranger at the gate wore a yellowed name tag that had long since given up trying to stay. Legible, his eyes were dry like bark, and he said something I almost didn't catch through his cracked lips. Keep left the fork unless you want to vanish. Shy nodded, because what else do you do when someone says that end drove the last half mile to the trailhead? My boots touched dirt that felt more like skin than soil, and the signs around the entrance were all scratched up like claws had tried to rewrite them. There were no birds, no wind, not even the hum of bugs. It was a silence so thick I could hear my heart beat in my ears, louder than the crunch of each step I took. The forest pressed in around. We weave black pines, tall and still, and their trunks warped just slightly, like they were leaning in to listen. I followed the map trail for maybe an hour before I saw it, a second path that curved right, a narrow indent in the woods between two trees whose bark was gray as bone. It wasn't on any map. It wasn't even worn down like a deer path. It looked fresh, like something had just pulled it open from beneath the surface of the world. I should have turned back. I should have kept walking. I didn't. First thing I noticed was the temperature dropped. The second thing was that the trees changed from pine to something else, something older. Their leaves weren't green, but the kind of pale, wet white you see on mushrooms and funeral flowers, and they rustled without wind, as if breathing. I whispered to myself, keep going, just to hear a voice. And that's when the path began to narrow so tight that branches scratched my arms, even though I wasn't moving sideways, just forward. I think it was the trees that were moving, closing in inch by inch. With each breath I took a mile in, maybe more, maybe less. There was a clearing, and in the middle was a stone circle, moss-covered, wet, pulsing and broken in spots, like something had tried to crawl out a long time ago and gave up. The stones weren't arranged like a campfire, but more like a trap, the kind you don't see until you're inside. I stepped close, and the moment my boot crossed the circle's edge, the forest screamed. Wasn't sound exactly, it was pressure, like a scream held underwater. It made my nose bleed and my teeth ache, and the sky overhead blinked. I swear it blinked like an eye opening to see what I had done. Then came the footsteps, not mine, not animal, either too deliberate to slow, like someone was taking time to make sure I heard each and every one. They circled me, but I saw nothing, just shadows thickening like oil in the spaces between. Treasy wanted to speak, but my voice caught. I reached for my phone, and the screen cracked open from the inside without me touching it. The glass split and leaked something dark that crawled down my hand. That S, when I ran the path, was gone, replaced by trees that hadn't been there before, and ground that pulsed like breath. And the sound behind me. The steps grew faster, closer, heavier, until they weren't footsteps anymore. They were dragging sounds like nails or hooves, or maybe Both I found myself at a stream that ran black, not from shadow, but from something in the water, thick and clotted and crawling with pale shapes. I jumped it, because what else do you do when you're being chased by something you can't see? And the moment my foot hit the other side, I heard my name whispered from the trees, not yelled, not called, whispered, like it already had me, like it didn't need to shout. I kept running, but the woods bent kept rerouting around me, and every tree looked the same. Every turn led me back to the circle, except the circle was different now, cracked wider, bleeding mist into the air that tasted like rust and teeth. There was someone in the center of it. They were kneeling, arms hanging, limp head tilted to one side, like it had forgotten how to hold itself up. And I swear, it was me or something, wearing meat, raised its face and opened its mouth, and inside was nothing but forest, black branches, dirt, teeth made of stone. It spoke without moving, its lips. You were never alone. Here you were always ours. You only forgot, backed away, and stepped on something that wasn't a root. It was a hand. It grabbed my ankle, and look, I fell. And the thing inside the circle crawled toward me with that same awful slowness, like it had all the time in the world. I kicked free and ran again, this time not caring if I was making progress or just bleeding in circles. I stumbled onto another clearing, not the first one, but another, this one full of bones, strung between trees with thread made of hair, and in the center was a sign nailed to a tree that read, "Welcome Backy." Didn't know what to do, so I sat down right there and cried that S. When I heard the breathing from behind me, soft, low, steady, like someone sleeping very close. I didn't turn round. The breathing grew louder until it matched mine, and then it replaced mine, and suddenly I couldn't breathe at all. Something leaned close enough that I felt its mouth brush my ear, and it whispered, "You've been walking in circles because you were meant to. The trail is a circle, and every time you walk it, you become less really blacked out, or maybe I vanished. I don't know, but when I opened my eyes again, it was night, and the forest was gone, and the trailhead was ahead of me, just a few feet away. Like I had never gone far at Alec. My clothes were torn, my hands were scratched up, and something was missing inside my mouth where a tooth should have been, and my voice didn't work anymore. I crawled to the path. The ranger was gone. The sky overhead blinked once more, and the trees whispered, "Well, see you again." That's the end of part 1. Part 2 will continue the next phase of the terror, where reality itself becomes part of the trap, and the trail reveals what's living beneath it. If you ever find a trail that isn't on the map, don't follow it, because some paths were made to trap you. This is a SMR 404 found. Subscribe before the woods find you. Use headphones for whispered horror. The next morning, I woke up in my motel room, with dirt under my nails and moss in my mouth. My pillows soaked with something that wasn't sweat or spit. It was black and smelled like burnt leaves and graveyard soil. The mirror wouldn't show my reflection. At first, it shimmered like water, until I blinked, and then I was there, but not quite. My eyes weren't looking back at me. They were watching something behind May turned fast. Nothing was there, but I heard the crunch of leaves on carpet, the slow bending of floorboards under weight that wasn't mine. I left the room, and when I reached my car, the windshield had handprints on the inside, like someone had been watching me all night, trying to get out or trying to stay. Eni drove without thinking back to the forest. Something inside me pulled, not like memory, more like gravity. I didn't want to go, but I needed to, the way a cut needs to bleed, the way a scream needs silence to make sense. The road was shorter. This time the trees were closer. The sun never came all the way up, just hovered like it was afraid of what it might see if it got too close at the gate. The ranger was still gone, but the booth door was open, and inside was a map, not printed but carved into leather, fresh and warm, like it had been peeled off something living. The trail marked wasn't the one I walked yesterday, but it twisted in the same way, spiraled in on itself, with red ink at the center that simply said, Yui didn't remember walking to the trailhead, but I was there again, my boots already muddy, my hands scratched and trembling like they remembered something I didn't. Trail felt different this time, not just the trees or the air, but time itself. I checked my phone, and the clock spun in slow motion, seconds stretching into minutes, into years. My skin itched like it was trying to fall. Off voices came from behind the trees, not whispers now, but full sentences in languages I never learned, but somehow understood. They told me stories. A girl who followed her brother into the woods and came out without a mouthy hunter who tracked a deer so deep into the trees he found something older wearing its skin. A family that came camping and woke up buried in a circle of salt teeth and silence. I heard them all in my head like they were memories, not stories. Like I was there, like I helped the path narrowed again, and I ducked through a gap in two rotted trees and found myself back in the circle again, even though I had walked in the opposite direction. This time it was different. The stones were breathing in and out, rising slightly with each exhale of the forest, like lungs buried beneath. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My voice was gone again, or maybe it was never mine to begin with. That's when the ground split open. A crack ran from my feet to the edge of the stone ring, and inside the earth moved, pulsing, not with blood but roots, white and wet like worms, coiling around each other, reaching up slowly, gently, like they were trying to touch me. One wrapped around my ankle, not tight, not painful, just holding like a hand in the dark. Then another, then 5, then 10. They pulled not down but inward, like the earth wasn't just a surface, but a mouth, and I was being tasted. I fell onto my knees, and the forest bent toward Timmy, every tree leaning at the same angle, every branch reaching low enough to stroke my back like a parent, like a predator. The thing from the circle appeared again, but this time it wasn't alone. Dozens of them, all with my face, all wearing different stages of my age, some older, some younger, some broken, some hollow-eyed and smiling too wide, like they knew a secret I was about to learn the hard way. They spoke together, one voice, many throats. You keep coming back, because part of you never left. The story known. Stories need endings. I tried to run, but my legs were no longer mine. The roots had crept under my skin, beneath muscle. A long bone moving me like a puppet, guiding my steps with quiet patience and horrible precision. They walked me to the river again, the one filled with black water. But now there was a bridge made of bones across it, and on the other side a cabin, small, rotting, but lit from within by something too red to be fire. The door opened on its own. Inside were shelves, and every shelf held jars filled with teeth, some baby teeth, some full adult molars, all labeled with names scratched into glass with fingernails. One jar was empty. The label read mine. That's when I knew I had walked into something older than a force, older than fear. The door shut behind me, and the red light pulsed like a heartbeat, and the air filled with whispers, not voices but memories. I didn't want to have. They showed me man dragging something through the woods under a moon that blinked, children laughing before going silent all at once. Woman sewing with hair, not thread, her eyes hollow and black and blinking from inside her mouth, and always, that circle of stones, pulsing, waiting, breathing, calling. I tried to scream again and again, and the air choked me with sweetness, like rotting fruit and wet fur, and I collapsed onto the floor, which wasn't wood anymore, but teeth. Hundreds, maybe thousands, all biting. Just a little, enough to make me bleed without breaking. The skin, the ceiling peeled back like eyelids opening, and above me was the sky, not black, not red, not blue, but made of faces pressed into each other, moving like clouds, moaning in unison. They whispered a name, mine, not just the one. I used all of them, the ones I never told anyone, the ones I forgot, the ones I would become. The cabin tilted, and the walls opened, and I was back in the forest, but it wasn't the forest anymore. The trees had iced the ground, pulsed with breath. The wind screamed in reverse, and the air stank of memory. Walked because I had to wand. Every step took me further. Innie no longer remembered what I was looking forlornly, what I couldn't leave behind. If you ever find a trail that isn't on the map, don't follow it, because some paths were made to trap you. This is ASMR 404 found. Subscribe before the woods find you. Use headphones for whispered horror. I didn't walk anymore. The trail walked me. The ground rolled beneath my feet, guiding me where it wanted me to go. Not like a path, but like veins, returning blood to the heart. It was quiet, but not silent. Not anymore. I heard whispers in my bones, not in my ears. I heard breathing under the soil. I heard my own voice repeating things I had never said. I felt watched, not by the trees, but by something beneath them, something wide and flat and old, something waiting for me to finish the story so it could begin. I stopped counting hours or days, or how many times I passed the same dead fox, its body swollen with mold and eyes replaced by buttons. I knew it was the same, because it hummed, when I got close, the same song I used to hear in dreams as a child. The lullaby I thought my mother sang. But never did my phone buzzed once, and I looked. It was a text from a number not in my contacts. It said you left the door open then. The screen turned black and reflected something behind. May turned slow, expecting the worst. But it was just me, a approach of the others, but closer. Now this one was crying without sound, blood running from empty sockets down its cheeks. It held something in its hand. My tooth, the one I lost it, offered it back to me, Slowly, like it wanted to put it back inside, I ran again. But the forest didn't move. This time, the trail stood still, and the world twisted around me, trees bending backwards, shadows pulling forward. My body slowed, not because I was tired, but because the rules here didn't care about effort or will. They only cared about endings. Dropped to my knees when I reached the final clearing. Wasn't marked by stones, but by holes, dozens, hundreds, all freshly dug, all the exact shape and size of me. I didn't need to measure. I knew each one was a version of me that had tried to leave and failed. Each hole a chapter, each chapter unfinished. The center was the real me, not a copy, not a mask, not a ghost me, but changed eyes, dark and distant skin, gray and flaked, like bark arms, to long fingers, to many teeth. It didn't speak. It just reached out and placed its hand on my chest, and then leaned close and whispered into my mouth, not my ear, my mouth. The trail never insinuated. It placed something inside me, something soft and cold and writhing. Something with a face made of screams and no mouth. Thigh blacked out again, or maybe I blinked when I opened my eyes. I was in my motel bed, just like the first time. Dirt on the sheets, moss in my throat, blood on my pillow, but this time the mirror didn't show me at all. No shimmer, no delayed, just nothing. I looked at my phone, and the home screen was different. The photos of me was gone, replaced with the clearing, the holes, the thing that was me smiling wider than possible, and behind it shapes in the trees. Dozens, maybe more, all watching. The date on the phone said it was a week later. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't slept, but I wasn't hungry or tired. I was empty, like the trail had scraped out everything inside and left just the Shelley tried to speak. My voice came out wrong, like leaves rustling backward, like wet cloth tearing, like teeth grinding together inside a throat filled with dirt. That night I dreamt of the stones again, but this time I stood in the center, and others watched me from the edge, their faces all mine, their mouths sewn shut, their eyes wide and pleading. They didn't want me to leave, because leaving meant forgetting, forgetting meant returning, and returning meant becoming. The next morning I walked outside, and the world looked normal, but every person I passed had bark under their fingernails and dirt at the corners of their mouths, and their eyes didn't blink. They folded inward. I got in my car, drove home, but every road I took looped back, every exit vanished behind me. Radio station whispered static that shaped words. I couldn't stop hearing. The trail is youth, trail is Ooster. Trail is hungry, ran out of gas on a dirt road, surrounded by trees I had never seen before, but recognized anyway. Opened the trunk and found my boots already muddy, my clothes already torn, my hands already shaking. I walked into the forest again because I had no choice. Trailhead waited for me, open and wide and smiling. And when I crossed the first step, the forest whispered, "Again, welcome back." Only this time it wasn't a greeting. It was a warning too. Something else, something watching, something older than fear, that this story had finally returned home, and that is the end of this trail for now, because every listener, every viewer, bye. and ear leaves a piece of themselves behind when they hear the truth. So, if you're still listening, still watching, still breathing, the trail knows you now, and it's waiting. It always waits, because the trail does not forget, and it never ever lets go.